When we picture serial killers, our minds jump to the usual suspects: a twisted stranger, a violent man lurking in the shadows. The reality is far more unsettling. Imagine if the person serving you tea at a family gathering, the friendly neighbor, or that quiet classmate was hiding a secret life of terror. Statistically, most serial killers are men, but women have committed some of the darkest crimes in history, blending in with chilling skill. Modern headlines still reveal cases where society never suspected the culprit, because kindness, age, or gender blinded us to real danger. So, where are you watching from? Are these kinds of stories totally new to you, or do you binge true crime like a pro? Drop your city, country, or just your first name in the comments. If you want more haunting investigations into history's unknown monsters, hit subscribe, give this video a like, and tap that notification bell. There's a lot more coming, and these stories are just the beginning. Let's dive straight into the nightmare with Patty Cannon, a woman so brutal her name was whispered in terror along the Delaware-Maryland border. Imagine a place where the law barely existed. Smugglers ran wild, and small towns felt like islands cut off from the world. That's where Patty got her start. Her childhood reads like a criminal's training manual. Parents running an inn that doubled as a safe haven for thieves, cutthroats, and all-around bad news. Patty didn't just witness crime. She was taught it, hands-on. Her mother coached her in deceiving travelers, and by the time Patty was a teen, she could sweet-talk, con, or rob pretty much anyone. But things spiraled darker. When a family friend threatened to expose their illegal smuggling ring, Patty's father responded with an axe, literally. He was caught and executed, but not before giving Patty the twisted life lesson she'd never forget. If someone stands in your way, you eliminate them. Patty's unhappy marriage was more of the same. At just 16, she was paired off with Jesse Cannon, a craftsman from Delaware, under her mother's manipulative scheme. After a few years of quietly playing house and having kids, Jesse fell mysteriously ill. No one could explain the symptoms: constant vomiting, convulsions, then paralysis. And it wasn't long before he was dead. Some neighbors blamed heartbreak, but even back then, a few suspected poison. Years later, Patty would admit she'd done it, watching coldly as Jesse died. Her mourning period was party after party. She ditched her children, took up work in seedy taverns, and turned violence into her trademark. Soon, age and addiction pushed her out of prostitution, and Patty saw a bigger opportunity: running her own criminal enterprise. With help from her son-in-law Joe Johnson, she opened a tavern right on the border, a deliberate move. If the law came knocking in Delaware, she crossed a few steps into Maryland, and vice versa. The spot became notorious, a magnet for lonely travelers with loose wallets and no one to miss them. But remember, this story is just getting started. Before we continue, what's your first impression of Patty Cannon? Cold mastermind, or just a product of her brutal world? Tell us in the comments. And if you think you'd spot someone like her today, make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what's next. As Patty's tavern flourished, her crimes evolved. At first, she targeted wealthy loners, poisoning or stabbing them, then hiding the bodies out back. This method should have drawn attention, but Patty was crafty. She cataloged guests in her head, asking just enough questions to know if anyone would come looking for them. If not, her gang pounced. Most chilling? Her private cemetery, witnesses from her crew later revealed that dozens, maybe more, vanished after a night at her tavern. Patty herself planted flowers over the graves to mask the scent of death. But robbery and murder weren't enough. In the 1820s, Patty discovered a new, more diabolical scheme: kidnapping free African Americans and fugitive slaves to sell downriver into the Deep South. History calls it the reverse Underground Railroad. Delaware, with its large free black population, was the perfect hunting ground for Cannon's crew. She enlisted a man named Ransom, who infiltrated local black communities promising work or safety, only to betray those he lured. Even children weren't safe. She bought a 7-year-old named Cyrus James, using him to entrance other kids. Patty's operation ran like a dark clockwork. Hidden rooms and trapdoors kept victims out of sight. She turned part of the basement into a dungeon, chaining families together before selling them off, sometimes separating them forever. Some local residents whispered about the horrible cries coming from the property at night, but fear and corrupt lawmen kept everyone silent. Modern scholars estimate her gang kidnapped upwards of 3,000 people, making her one of history's most prolific human traffickers, male or female. There are even survivor stories passed through generations describing Patty's monstrous cruelty and cunning. Some described how she deliberately broke up families, believing it made people easier to control and less likely to rebel. If this is already giving you chills, just wait, because what finally brought Patty Cannon down is stranger than fiction. Before we reveal her downfall, hit like if you're learning something new, and share this with a friend who follows dark history. But trust me, justice in Patty's world was never straightforward. Patty Cannon's empire of terror unraveled with gruesome irony. It wasn't some daring raid that ended her reign. It was the accidental discovery of a blue chest stuffed with human bones. A local farmer stumbled on the box while working land near Patty's tavern, and authorities were forced to investigate. Among the bones, the remains of a missing slave trader, one of Patty's own clients, killed over a botched deal. This grisly find started a domino effect. The police arrested Cyrus James, the boy she'd once used as bait, now a traumatized young man. Broken by guilt, Cyrus spilled everything: locations of hidden rooms, torture chambers, and shallow graves. The revelation shocked even the most hardened lawmen. Patty's tavern was hiding over 20 people, chained in filth. Bodies turned up everywhere, beneath floors, in old wells, secret basements, and flower beds. Cyrus described how Patty tortured victims for amusement, sometimes keeping them alive for weeks. Patty was formally charged with 4 confirmed murders, but the real number was likely orders of magnitude higher. Awaiting execution, Cannon outfoxed the system one last time. She smuggled poison behind bars and slowly took her own life rather than face the gallows. Her final days were spent raving or in a deep, unresponsive trance. In a last confession, she admitted to killing 11 people herself, including her own infant, and plotting scores of other murders with her gang. The legend only grew after her death. Patty's skull was studied by phrenologists, those scientists who thought criminality lived in the shape of your head, and it still sits in the Smithsonian's collection today, a creepy relic. Some historians debate whether her body count or her trafficking crimes are worse, but one truth stands out. She built an empire out of pure horror that haunted the region for generations. Let's hit pause for a second. Do you think someone like Patty Cannon could slip through the cracks in today's world? Or have we actually gotten better at spotting evil hiding in plain sight? In the age of surveillance cameras and social media, could a mastermind blend in for decades the way she did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And let's test the community. Has anyone here ever had a neighbor or coworker who gave you that gut feeling? Like you might not know their whole story? Tell us about it, whether it turned out to be something or just your imagination. Before we continue, remember to hit that like button if you're appreciating these deep dives. Every click helps us keep digging into the darkest corners of forgotten history. Stories you won't find anywhere else. Okay, ready for the next descent into madness? Let's go. Now let's cross the Atlantic to 1960s England, where Myra Hindley became infamous as half of the duo behind the Moors murders. Was she truly just a partner in crime? Or something even more chilling, a driving force blending into everyday life? Myra's story begins in gritty post-war Manchester, a city still scarred by bombs and poverty. She grew up in Gorton, where violence was as common as factory smoke. Her father, Bob, was a war veteran haunted by his past and quick with his fists. Myra's earliest memories were of beatings, sleepless nights, and learning to defend herself. But her dad also taught her something more sinister: to win a fight at any cost. No mercy, no backing down. That lesson stuck. Rejected and moved to her grandmother's as a child, Myra internalized the feeling that she was never truly wanted. She became hard, suspicious, and tough, a defender of herself, but also hungry for approval. One traumatic turning point: the death of the only person she ever loved innocently, Michael Higgins, a younger boy she tried to protect. She wasn't there the day he drowned, and guilt haunted her for years. Losing Michael twisted her. She developed a fixation on death, funerals, the rituals surrounding loss. By the time Myra was a young woman, her life was headed towards working-class stability. A dull job, early marriage, a treadmill she dreaded. Then she met Ian Brady at the office, a man with a dark magnetism and belief that moral rules didn't apply to superior people like themselves. Myra became obsessed. Brady ignored her, then manipulated her, drawing her into his world of dark philosophy, crime novels, and increasingly risky fantasies. Soon, he tested her loyalty with petty theft, and then much worse. Their bond insulated them from the outside world. Psychologists now say Myra's need for approval and her trauma history made her uniquely vulnerable to this kind of manipulation. Before we go deeper into Myra's twisted motives, if this segment is giving you chills, tap like and share this video. And what's your take? Was Myra a born villain or created by a brutal environment and a master manipulator? Let's hear your thoughts below before we reveal just how horrifically far she and Brady went. Together, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady formed a partnership that terrified England and left scars across generations. Their crimes became known as the Moors murders, a phrase that still chills anyone who hears it in the UK today. Their method was cruel and disturbingly calculated. Myra, with her ordinary face and gentle voice, lured children and teenagers whom Brady would attack, abuse, and murder on the wild, wind-swept Saddleworth Moor. Myra's participation went far beyond being an accessory. She drove the car, engaged the victims, and sometimes helped restrain them. They meticulously planned each crime. Brady scouted the moors, studying the ground for places to dig shallow graves. Myra kept coded diaries, and the two took photos at the crime scenes, sometimes posing cheerfully, just feet above their hidden victims. They returned over and over, reliving the murders like twisted souvenirs. One of the most haunting elements? How they used the trust people had in Myra's appearance as a harmless young woman. Parents never imagined she'd be an accomplice, much less a murderer. In total, 5 children and teens, Pauline Reed, John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, and Edward Evans, were abducted, tortured, and killed over just 2 years. The case gripped the entire UK and remains etched in British collective memory. There's another layer to this horror. Their crimes fueled a media storm so intense that the Moors murders influenced countless true crime books, TV series, and even debates about whether evil can be born versus made. As recent as the 2000s, searches for Keith Bennett's remains still made national headlines, showing how the pain of these crimes refuses to fade. But what destroyed every last hope for sympathy were the artifacts police found, particularly an audio tape of Leslie Ann Downey's final moments. If you think you've heard the worst so far, what's on that tape will shake you to your core. Before you find out, don't forget, if this story is making your heart race, share it with a friend who can handle the darkest real-life mysteries. And drop a comment. Would you have trusted Myra Hindley if you met her as a neighbor. The investigation into the Moores murders revealed horrors no one was prepared for. When police entered Myra and Brady's unassuming home, they uncovered disturbing photos and carefully marked maps, pointing police towards hidden graves on the moors. But it was the chilling audio recording that truly shook the nation. On the tape, you can hear 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey pleading for her life, calling Myra Mommy and begging to go home. Myra's voice remains cold and commanding, showing no sign of pity or regret as she orders the terrified child to be quiet. For many in Britain, that tape erased any possibility that Myra was just a manipulated accomplice. The public reaction was instant and overwhelming. The trial was a media sensation, with newspapers publishing new revelations almost daily. Both Myra and Brady were sentenced to life in prison, but their story didn't end there. Myra spent decades trying to convince the public she had been brainwashed or coerced by Brady. She gave interviews, wrote letters, and sought parole, always insisting she wasn't the real monster. But the families of the victims, especially Keith Bennett's, never found closure. Keith's body was never recovered, and even today, his family continues searching the moors, desperate for answers. The case changed British society, leading to stricter parole laws and deep discussions about the possibility of redemption for those who commit unimaginable acts. Some criminologists and psychologists have since studied Myra's role. Was she driven by her own darkness or by Brady's influence? Which part of the Moores murders haunts you most? The manipulation, the coldness, or the way the victims' families suffered for decades? Let's talk about it in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more true crime uncovered, even when it's this unsettling. Let's reset for a second. Do monsters really look ordinary? Or do we just ignore the signs because it's easier to believe evil wears a mask? Myra Hindley looked like any other young woman from her neighborhood. Nothing to make you cross the street or lock your doors. It makes you wonder, have you ever doubted someone who seemed perfectly normal on the outside? Maybe you sensed something off about a coworker, a neighbor, or even a friend, but shrugged it off. Let us know in the comments if you've ever had that gut feeling about someone, and whether it turned out to be anything real. Your stories might help someone else learn to trust their instincts. And before we get to the next story, hit the like button if you want more hard-hitting cases like these. Every like tells the algorithm that you want true crime content with real depth. Ready for the next jaw-dropping tale? Let's go. Travel with me now to 1980s California, where Dorothea Puente hid pure evil behind a sweet grandmotherly smile. On a quiet street in Sacramento, she transformed her boarding house into a death trap. But how did someone so seemingly harmless pull it off for years? Dorothea's life started in chaos. Orphaned young, shuffled through bleak Depression-era institutions, and quick-to-learn survival meant lying and manipulating. By her teens, she was already inventing stories about her past and marrying older men. 4 husbands, 4 quick departures, and plenty of stolen cash. But as the decades passed, Dorothea realized simple cons weren't enough. She started working the charity circuit, painting herself as a guardian angel for the lost, especially the elderly, disabled, or mentally ill. It was the perfect cover. By the time Sacramento needed someone to care for society's forgotten, Puente was poised to step in. Her house on F Street was warm, filled with photos and family memorabilia, and often smelled of home-cooked meals. Social workers called her a saint. But behind that kindness, she was scoping out her next targets, those with pensions, few connections, and no one likely to come looking. This was more than just one greedy scammer. Dorothea's case is a chilling example of how elder abuse blends into society or stays invisible. The National Council on Aging reports that millions of elders suffer abuse each year, mostly undetected. Dorothea's story isn't even unique in method. Other female killers like Gwendolyn Graham and Catherine Wood also preyed on the most vulnerable, using trust as their weapon. Before we uncover just how Dorothea engineered her killing machine, subscribe if you haven't already. There are more unsolved and underreported murders out there than most realize. Share this video with someone who thinks all grandmas are harmless. Trust me, Puente will make you question everything. Inside Dorothea Puente's boarding house, every detail was calculated to keep up appearances and keep suspicions buried. Her killing method was disturbingly simple. She'd mix powerful sedatives like Dalmane into her tenants' drinks, sometimes with alcohol, until they fell into a catatonic sleep that leads straight to death. Then, while the rest of the world saw a sweet caretaker, she'd quietly dispose of the bodies in the backyard, using quick burial and hired day laborers to dig holes, all under the guise of gardening or repairs. She prayed carefully, selecting tenants who were isolated, with little or no family, often battling mental illness or addiction. Dorothea was methodical. She kept detailed records of dosages and effects, tracking what worked and how quickly. The victims kept coming, but their pension checks kept coming too, with Dorothea forging signatures and writing fake letters to families and social workers to explain the disappearances. Her operation brought in thousands each month, a fortune for the 1980s. She also used the classic moving away lie. If a social worker inquired, she'd say the tenant went traveling or found new work, sometimes even sending forged postcards. One social worker, Judy Moyes, wasn't fooled. She pushed for an investigation after a tenant named Bert Montoya disappeared, and that's when police finally dug in the yard, uncovering not just Bert, but 6 more bodies. It was a forensic nightmare, with advances in DNA helping confirm identities years later. Incredibly, Puente acted unfazed. As police found bodies, she offered them coffee, chatted about her nerves, and even convinced an officer to let her step out for a moment, using the chance to flee to Los Angeles. If you're stunned by her calm, you're not alone. Veteran detectives still talk about how she kept up her gentle routine until the very end. But wait, the biggest shock came at her trial, when records suggested there could be even more victims. Forensic teams are still comparing unidentified remains from across California, trying to answer questions Dorothea may have taken to her grave. If you think Dorothea's story deserves more attention, hit the like button and share this video with someone who loves true crime. Do you believe killers like her can still hide in plain sight today? Let's talk about it in the comments. Even as Dorothea Puente faced arrest and trial, her chilling composure never cracked. When police finally caught up with her in Los Angeles, she simply offered a quiet apology, never admitting guilt, never offering explanations. Throughout her 5-month trial, Dorothea stuck to her story. She was a caring landlady who just wanted to help people, and it was mere coincidence that death seemed to follow her. Her defense tried painting her as a misunderstood thief rather than a methodical killer, but the evidence was overwhelming. Toxicology reports proved that the sedatives found in every victim's body matched prescriptions written only for Puente. Handwriting experts matched her forged checks and letters. Investigators even uncovered her personal notebooks filled with notes about her experiments, doses, effects, and timelines, each victim reduced to a number. Despite being convicted for 3 murders, police always suspected more. The advanced state of decomposition on some bodies made it impossible to prove every case. Even after sentencing, Dorothea's eerie stillness never wavered. She died in prison in 2011 at the age of 82, insisting to the end on her innocence and leaving behind unanswered questions. How many lives had she really taken, and how long had her deception lasted? The shockwaves from the Puente case changed how authorities investigate unexplained deaths among elderly and disabled people. New laws in California soon required stricter oversight of care homes, with regular check-ins and tougher background checks. And forensic science continues to unlock secrets from cold cases, Investigators still compare missing persons to unidentified remains from Puente's old properties. So tell me, would you have trusted Dorothea Puente? Or would your instincts have warned you something was off? If you made it this far, smash that like button. Stories like these remind us why true crime matters, not just to remember victims, but to protect others from the monsters hiding in plain sight. What do these chilling stories have in common? Patty Cannon, Myra Hindley, and Dorothea Puente proved that evil doesn't always look how we expect. Each woman used society's blind spots, gender, age, a grandmotherly face, or a trusting relationship, to slip beneath suspicion and target the most vulnerable. For decades, our cultural bias told us women were only caregivers or victims, never the mastermind behind real horror. Their victims? So often, they were people the world forgot. Children, the elderly, the isolated, those with no one to demand answers. Again and again, these killers exploited the simple truth that the more invisible someone is, the easier they are to erase. It's a dark lesson, but one worth remembering, especially as modern headlines still reveal similar cases around the world. Experts say the best protection isn't fear, but vigilance. Learn to look for patterns of manipulation or control, even in unlikely places. Listen to your instincts, and if something doesn't add up, ask questions. If nothing else, these stories should remind us to watch out for one another, especially those with the least power or voice. Which of these killers creeped you out the most? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Your thoughts could spark the next case we deep dive into. If this dark journey taught you something, or if it changed how you see trust and danger, let us know. And if you think someone you know needs to hear this, share the video. They just might thank you down the line. If you stuck with us this far, you belong in the Vault of Vile family, the rare kind of viewer who doesn't turn away from the darkest corners of history. Thank you for joining us as we pulled back the mask on three monsters society almost missed. Our mission is simple: tell these stories not to glorify evil, but to remember the victims, warn the vulnerable, and make sure history's ugliest truths never get swept under the rug. We have more disturbing cases on the way, exploring little-known killers, unsolved disappearances, and the strangest mysteries from every corner of the world. So if you want to stay ahead of the mainstream, subscribe right now, ring that notification bell, and help us grow by liking and sharing this video with someone who can handle a little darkness. Let us know your thoughts. What case shocked you most, and what story do you want us to tackle next? Your comments help shape everything we do here. If you're ready for even deeper dives into twisted minds and sinister secrets, stick with Vault of Vile. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and remember, evil isn't always what it seems.